the way that Americans are being duped regularly, which is the fact that ops are run within ops. They're always kind of working in countercurrents to each other. And so if you think you figured out what the op is, which is, I think, a lot of folks that are probably sitting in your audience right now, like, I pegged it.
Yeah.
That is the op.
Kyle, we were talking a little bit before about your connection with your behind the scenes information about the bombing in Las Vegas. Why don't you go ahead and kind of elaborate on that story?
Yeah, so like a lot of things that happen, you're just kind of in the right place at the right time, or you know the right people. So for folks that have been tracking that story, they understand that there was an email that was sent over to a guy named Sam Shoemate, who I knew by reputation but didn't know personally. He happened to be friends with a mutual friend of mine named Rob Green, who's a commander in the Navy, active duty, whistleblower, guy who's been pushing back against the vaccine mandates and things like that. So done a lot of good work. Rob reached out and called me on last Thursday and just said, hey, man, would you take some information or help Sam get some information to the FBI? And that was how I knew that what was going on was credible, because people don't volunteer hoaxes to the FBI. That's a felony. Generally speaking, it's going to get you into a lot of hot water. And Sam Shoemate spent like 21 years in the Army, top secret clearance, not the kind of guy that's going to be messing around with that. So they reached out to me. I facilitated a handoff to the Vegas special agent in charge, or the supervisory special agent running the squad doing that investigation. And then they subsequently reached back out to me to confirm the route of that evidence coming in. Since then, the guy named Spencer Evans, who runs the field office there, has confirmed that they believe that came from the guy, Matt Lillensberger. So it sounds like that was a legit email. Now, whether the information is legit is probably a totally other story. I think George has some weigh-ins on that. But it roped me into this little space where there's a lot of people that are seeing a conspiracy theory where there doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
We're dealing with a space where there's so many operations being run and people keep thinking they see the op. George has illuminated for me the way that Americans are being duped regularly, which is the fact that ops are run within ops. They're always kind of working in countercurrents to each other. And so if you think you figured out what the op is, which is, I think, a lot of folks that are probably sitting in your audience right now, like, I pegged it.
Yeah.
That is the op. The op is to get you to believe one thing while they can do something else. And I always call it the laser pointer theory. It's like a cat. You know, you show the laser pointer, the cat attacks it, the hand is somewhere else. And it's manipulating you to think you see what's going on. It makes a good internet video, but in reality, that's what's going on for our intelligence agencies. They constantly are manipulating our opinions and our attention span. And if they can get you to go over here, then you're not going to pay attention to over here. It's like, did you ever see the movie Lucky Number 11?
No.
Did you really not?
No.
Oh my God.
I don't watch a lot of movies.
Bruce Willis, Morgan Freeman, Sir Ben Kingsley. It's fantastic. Lucy Liu's in it. You fall in love with her, even if you don't like Asian women. Doesn't make a difference. It's totally irrelevant. But the whole point of it is that they have a thing called the Kansas City Shuffle. And the Kansas City Shuffle is basically convincing you that there's going to be a con job on you, like a 3-card Monty. But in reality, somebody's picking your pocket. So they might let you win the 3-card Monty game. You think you figured out what the con was.
Yep.
In reality, someone's picked your pocket and they've gone and emptied your bank account. So the con is not the con that you think it is. That's what a Kansas City Shuffle is. And our intel agencies do this at a very high level with more layers than that all the time. That's why everyone always feels like there's a PsyOp going on.
Yeah.
Because they're constantly getting PsyOp.
There is a PsyOp
Yeah, you
going
just
on.
don't know what it is.
George, you mentioned January 6th and how that kind of changed things for you. Can you elaborate on that?
So at that time, I was the co-supervisor for the high-intensity drug trafficking area for New England. So I had the 5-state area, and I was located in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Fusion Center.
You want to bring this about a fist distance from your face?
So
there you go.
Yeah. So I had two FBI analysts working for me. One at the Boston Regional Intelligence Center, the BRIC it's referred to, in Boston, co-located in the headquarters for the Boston Police Department. And then the other one was right there in the Commonwealth Fusion Center. Now, the Fusion Centers are a post 9/11 construct. There are 56 of them across the country. And the purpose for that is to be able to push intelligence down to the local law enforcement level in an expeditious manner. So when January 6th happened, the FBI went into full disinformation mode. Two guys by the name of Steve Jensen and Steve D'Antuono instituted these twice daily conference calls for over a month to all 56 fusion centers. And it was a call-in, so they would speak, you would listen. So there were thousands of people on these phone calls, listening to this narrative twice a day, which, if I distilled it all down, they were breathlessly explaining how our democracy had almost fallen and that there is a vast network of right-wing nut jobs from Seattle to Miami, from San Diego to Bangor, Maine. And this in itself is bad enough, but it gets much worse because they're talking to these fusion centers, and in these fusion centers are representatives from each state. So you have state police colonels and other people that report directly to the governor, or the governor themselves has the wherewithal to listen to these conversations. So this narrative was being beamed into every state capital in the United States for over 6 weeks, twice a day, how the country almost collapsed. And that was a watershed moment for me after COVID and all the shenanigans with that. It's like, I got to get out of here. And, so I retired, about 10 months after that.
Okay. So if considering the fact that, it sounds like the federal government kind of turned inwards and started focusing on American citizens, how much do you think that, or why is it that they didn't have a better ability to prevent the 2 terror attacks that we're referencing? 15 people died, and if the government is actually taking this massive apparatus that it built and designed to use on foreign entities, how did they fail to prevent the 2 attacks that happened on January 1st?
So I think it's important for your audience that we start at the very beginning. And the beginning is January 12th, 2001 in Camp David, when George Bush sat down with Bob Mueller and said, I know you're going to catch these guys, Bob, but what are you going to do to stop the next one? And at that time, national security changed from the apparatus that I grew up in the Marine Corps for 13 years, from protecting the continuation of the United States and the protection of the Constitution to no American shall die at the hands of a terrorist. So giving George Bush and the intelligence community the benefit of the doubt on January or September 12th, their motives were altruistic, that we need to stop this sort of thing from happening again. Because my first deployment was doing boardings at sea with the Coast Guard. We didn't know anything about what was going on. And we'll get into my time at Guantanamo Bay later, but we didn't know anything. So we overreacted in an exponential fashion to basically subverting the Constitution and the civil liberties protected therein to keep one single American from being killed by a terrorist. So we developed, we had the Patriot Act, we expanded FISA, and we created, we lumped the FBI into the intelligence community. Up until the Patriot Act, the FBI didn't even have an intelligence component. So when George Bush had this conversation with Bob Mueller, Bob not just stepped on the gas, he stood on the gas pedal, and the FBI almost doubled in size. They increased by about 45% the number of personnel to become a domestic intelligence agency. And then they gave them all these intrusive tools to make sure that no American shall die of terrorism. And it was just a few months ago that the Congress just reauthorized FISA, which certainly didn't stop Jabbar in New Orleans, did it? And it didn't stop the Scenario brothers in Boston, which I'm intimately familiar with. So I don't have a good answer for you, Glenn, a happy answer.
Yeah. Kyle, do you have any kind of take on the failures, considering the apparatus, considering the extent that the government has gone to violate people's rights?
Oh yeah.
To absolutely shred the Constitution, in my opinion. They have all this technology. I mean, we are night and day beyond where we were in 2010. Never mind, 2001. So how do you think, if you were, actually a representative of the federal government, how do you justify it?
Well, I used to be, so there's that.
Yeah.
So look, badge and gun, if you carry a badge and gun for the United States government and your job is supposed to be to protect the Constitution, you're not really protecting the Article 1 powers, the Article 2 powers. You're not protecting that there is a judiciary and how it's established. Like, that's not what your job is. Your job is to protect the Bill of Rights. And I think we should be more specific about that. I'm not 100% sure that when I swore in as an enlisted guy in the Air Force. When I swore in as an FBI agent, I'm not sure I could tell you every single, one of the first 10 and what they were. I can not only tell you what they are, but I can detail them, and I refer to them regularly now. So that's something that should be part of your training, and it really wasn't. I mean, I know they didn't quiz us on it, and I think that's important. But let me try to do this. What George just said, that change in the mission, there's two pieces to it. One, the mission changed, and we can track that evolution, and it's about 8 years-ish each time, times 3 gets us to 24. So from that period of time, we started off looking for international terrorism, people overseas doing bad things overseas and trying to bring them to us. That ran out. Also, we had a military that was over there doing some good work. So the GWAT actually, whether people like it or not, people are into war, the fact of the matter is we tied up the enemy overseas and they couldn't bring it to here as easily.
Which was the argument that was being made a lot at the time. And again, whether people like it or not, fight them over there so they're not fighting here.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War Podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon. So subscribe and come hang out.